share some training tips with y'all. And I thought long and hard about it, and I thought, you know, do I want to, okay, here's, you know, how you get a lead change, which is really almost impossible to teach not, you know, on hand. And so I thought, you know, what's like the most important thing that I can try to convey that any discipline can, you know, use, since we have a wide variety, definitely, of followers and people who use this product. You know, what can everybody use? And I can't stress enough that what I decided to share with y'all is what I do in the first 5 to 10 minutes of each ride. Doesn't matter if it's an aged horse, a green horse, one I've just started, if it's a ranch horse, hunt seat horse, pleasure horse, jumping horse. Does not matter what I'm doing or what that horse is going to go on to do. This is what you need to be doing in the first 5 minutes of your ride. So we're going to jump over to me riding, and I'm going to explain to y'all, you know, how to go ahead and push that body around. It does not, I can't get that across enough. It doesn't matter what discipline you're riding. You need to be able to push all quarters of your horse's body around. Ask him to stand up in his shoulder, stand up in his rib cage, push that hip in, pivot in all 4 quarters, give his face. You know, no, not every discipline needs him to pack his face like a pleasure horse or a hunter under saddle horse, but they all need to know how to rate. And if you don't have that jaw first, you can't rate a horse. And so we're gonna, you know, go through, just get on, just start out walking, push that body around for 5 minutes or so, then move into the jog, pushing that body around. And the better that your horse gets and the better that you get, you should be able to push them around, you know, counter arc them, side pass them, 2-track them in all 3 gaits and in several different cadences. And that's really going to help you, you know, if you've got a horse that's shouldering into barrels, be able to pick that shoulder up, be able to stand that rib cage up. If you decide you're coming in too hot, you know, to a fence, or, you know, too hot to a barrel, you need to be able to rate back. You know, if you decide, oh, I'm about to knock this, be able to pick your shoulder up. And it's a lot happening real quick, and I don't run barrels. I don't know anything about finishing a barrel horse, but I've started more than a handful of barrel horses. And, you know, jumping people come in behind us and go, you know, wow, we've never had one. This broke through the body. It makes our job way easier to go on and finish it. And it makes my job way easier with a horse that I go on to finish. So this is probably the most important thing that I could teach anybody, and it goes for all disciplines. So if y'all stick around, figure out what we do and our tips and tricks and training tips for the first 5 to 10 minutes of your ride. So the first thing I do anytime I get on one, doesn't matter what kind of discipline we're working towards, doesn't matter how old, how finished, how green, get on and just start pushing their body around. Get them loosened up, give them something to think about. This is going to help when you start asking for that jog, that lope, canter. You're pushing them around a course. They're already going to be thinking. They're not going to be bored. It's going to get them loosened up and listening to you. So the first thing I'm doing with him is just getting on him and asking him to walk some circles. I want that shoulder up. I want his rib cage up. And then I'm going to counter arc him. I'm going to use that right rein here in my right leg and just start pushing him over and loosening those shoulders up. And when he gives me what I'm asking for, I'm going to slowly release him and just let him walk it out a few steps. And then I'm going to take him the other way, this time left rein, left leg, counter arcing him, pushing that shoulder around that hip. And the more time you spend at the beginning of a ride, again, no matter what discipline, just pushing their body around, the better off you're going to be. If you're going around a jump course and you can't get one collected and you can't put one where you want to when you need to, you're going to have problems. If you're going into a barrel pattern and one drops its shoulder and you can't pick it back up, you're going to be in a bind. It doesn't matter what discipline you're going into, you need that body broke. It's not just a pleasure thing, it's not just a quarter horse people thing. So there I'm going to ask him to push his hip around his shoulder. I'm not asking him to pivot yet. I start out big and work my way down. But I want to be able to push any part of his body where I want to. And again, when he gives me what I'm asking for, I'm going to let him walk out. I'm not trying to crank on him as soon as I get on him. Just give him something to think about. Get him warmed up. Get him loosened up. There, we're going to do it the other direction. And I'm going to counter arc him again and start to side pass him a little. And this horse isn't completely finished. And again, that's where the more of this you do right off the bat, the better off you're going to be. And you can see he's already starting to want to sit in the bit a little better, collect up a little better, and we're not even really progressing yet. We're not working out. We're just getting that mindset set and that body loosened up. Now I'm going to go ahead and start asking him to try to, pivot a little more, not just push his whole body around in a counter arc, but that counter arc is that foundation to being able to go ahead and stop that shoulder, and instead of asking him to move his whole body around, try to start planting that foot. And again, he's not finished, but he's getting there. And you can't just go to asking one to plant that foot and pivot. There's got to be a foundation and baby steps to it. But you'll have a better overall workout if you just spend the first 5-10 minutes doing this sort of thing. Now we're going to pivot on our forehand each direction. Earlier we were just pushing the hip more around the front end in a circle. Now we're going to start trying to plant it. And again, I do this with aged horses, babies. I always start out big and then kind of work my way in. I've got horses that know exactly what you're asking in a pivot, but I'm going to go ahead and push that body around in a counter arc, get those shoulders loosened up and get them thinking before I just ask them to, plant that foot and move around it. And you'll find if you'll spend the time to do this up front, the first time you ask them to jog off, they're already going to be more collected. The first time you ask them to lope off, they're already going to be more collected. They're already thinking about pushing that hip in, being cadenced, staying in the bit, and listening to you. If you just hop on, walk around a second, I've lunged, his muscles are warmed up, he's good. He's not mentally prepared, and he's not stretched and flexed and thinking about what he's doing. This horse is learning his lope off still, so I spend plenty of time up front pushing his hip in, asking him to walk a little more cadenced, like I would ask him to set up to lope off. But then I just let him walk out of it. I don't want him anticipating that lope off, so I'm not only going to do that as I ask him to lope off later on in a workout. I'm going to spend a little time up front with any horse, but especially one that's learning it, just asking him to walk with that hip pushed in. And he's trying to figure it out, and he's still, you know, that button's not completely finished in there yet. But I'm asking him to look in to the same direction that I'm pushing that hip in. I don't want him C-shaped because I don't want him to fall on that shoulder if I were to ask him to lope off. But just start really lifting that shoulder, pushing that hip in, and then if I were to ask him to lope off, he's set up, he's there, and he can just lift that shoulder and depart. But you'll see here, now that we've spent that time just pushing that body around, his jog's not as put together as it's going to end up, but he's not rushing into it, he's not, you know, coming up with his face, and he's already thinking about trying for you. So he's a little quick-legged, he's kind of wanting to lag behind and fall apart. He's having a hard time finding that slow, but staying together. And I'm going to give him an opportunity to try, but I always then again at the jog some exercises to get that cadence, to get it put together, get him thinking. Then I'll pick up and start counter-arcing him, side passing him, pushing his body around at the jog. And eventually when you can do this in all three gaits is when you're going to have a lot more say in where that horse is cadenced and where he's carrying himself. So even, you know, oh, this is a pleasure horse. Well, he's not really, he's my ranch prospect, but I want him broke before I ever, you know, start worrying about pushing him to the extreme. So with this horse, I can jog him around like a pleasure horse. I can push him out into an extended trot. And I don't always keep his head down. No, in a ranch class, I don't want his head down. But I want him to know how to get off the bit, how to come back to me. I want him to learn to move out and then come back. You know, I can jog this horse. I can extended jog this horse. Then I have my ranch jog, my ranch extended trot, and then I've got my hunt seat trot. I've got, you know, 5 or 6 different cadences in every gait on this horse. So I can go in and play at an all-around show. And every horse needs to know those fundamentals. He needs to know that I get put where they put me. Doesn't matter what discipline you're going in. And these exercises are going to help you in the long run, no matter where you're going, and every day before every ride, to just get that body where you want it, get that mindset where you want it. And then he's, you know, ready to go to work. And there you can already see he's wanting to stay together better. That's more of a 1-2 beat versus that hind end being kind of lagged behind. And that counter arcing at the jog, they're going to pick up a little pace. I don't want him pleasure jogging, you know, into a counter arc. I want him to pick up a little pace. That way that he's really having to use that hind end up underneath of himself. And that's how I spend the first 5 to 10 minutes of every ride, no matter what horse, what discipline I'm working on. And even your real green babies start in this direction at the beginning of every ride. They're not going to plan it. They're not going to know exactly what's going on. But if you'll start that now, they'll have something to build on.
So that's all, guys. If you have any other questions, feel free to email me. My email is rayperformancehorses@gmail.com. Feel free to follow us, message me on Facebook, Instagram @rayperformancehorses. If there's anything else that you'd like me to elaborate on, maybe we can, you know, get with you on that. And again, this is just where you want to be so you can get the most out of your workout, get their mindset right, get their body shaped up right, stretched out right, flexed, and get them thinking about moving around, and then you can go on to finish your workout. So thanks, guys, and we'll see you again next month.